This is the word that has been proclaimed to you. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. The apostles said to the Lord, "Increase our faith." The Lord replied, "If you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you would say to this mulberry tree, 'Be uprooted and planted in the sea,' and it would obey you. Who among you would say to your servant who has come in from the plowing and tending the sheep in the field, 'Come here immediately and take your place at the table'? Would he rather not say to him, 'Prepare something for me to eat'? Put on your apron and wait on me while I eat and drink. You may eat and drink when I am finished." Is he grateful to that servant because he did what he was commanded? So should it be with you. When you have done all you have been commanded, say, "We are unprofitable servants. We have done what we were obliged to do." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise you, Lord Jesus Christ.
If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you would say to this mulberry tree, "Be uprooted and planted in the sea," and it would obey you. Faith is God speaking to us as the first truth. Faith is a light that shines on our minds and allows us to see things with the eyes of eternity. It is a bright light for those who wander in the darkness of a cold world. It is a supernatural virtue, and when we say virtue, we mean it's a habit or something that's put into practice and done repeatedly. The Apostle James writes in chapter 2 of his letter, "Show me your faith apart from your works, and I, by my works, will show you my faith." Faith is about becoming more like Jesus and letting him reign in our hearts. And faith is food for us in this. You've probably heard the expression that you are what you eat. And I can't help but think about a commercial that was on several years ago. And it was advertising some sort of healthy breakfast. And this man was on a subway going to work, and he was seeing all these people eating donuts, bagels, Pop-Tarts, and they were all starting to become exactly what they were eating in kind of a ridiculous way. But if we were to apply this to the Eucharist, wouldn't it be great if we could all see each other as another Christ after we consume his body and blood in the Eucharist? Wouldn't it be great if we could see each other as the mystical body of Christ? After all, when we do consume Jesus, we consume him body and blood, soul and divinity whenever we receive the Eucharist. We are called to become more Christ-like every time we do receive the Eucharist, because it is the source and the summit of our lives, and we should live our lives with the Eucharist as our center. That is the main form of our nourishment. It is why you're here at every Mass, every weekend, and on holy days of obligation. But another form of nourishment for us is faith. Faith should be the meat of our life. It should be the main course. It gives us strength, and it makes us ready to see things as God sees them. A heart purified by faith, which helps us attend to those things which are above, rather than be preoccupied and distracted with earthly life. There are some things in this life that we cannot ignore, and faith helps us correctly order these things and helps us put God first in our lives. Faith, in a way, must be seen to be known. This can be by the light of God, who puts the first spark of faith in us at baptism. Without having a visible sacrament, we would not know the beginnings of faith. Just like the rich man in last week's gospel, we are called to show our faith by our works. The rich man could not perform good works because the rich man did not have faith. If he had listened to Moses and the prophets, he would have been able to help Lazarus, but he didn't. But this is not so with us. Faith allows us to perform true acts of charity. Faith opens our hearts to wonderful new realities. And thanks be to God that we have that connection with God to show us the way. The example of asking a tree to be planted in the sea sounds ridiculous at a glance, but the reality is that our faith allows us to ask anything of God. He does not always grant it to us or give it to us in the way or the time that we think he should, but God does answer our prayers, and God does allow us to ask him. There's a story of a little girl who told her dad she was going to ask God for $1,000 for her birthday. Her dad was just kind of amused by this and said, "Okay, sweetie." Her birthday came and went, and the next day, her father went to her and said, "Well, it looked like God didn't answer your prayer." But she corrected her dad, and she said that God did answer her prayer. He just said no. Which gets us to the second part of the gospel, which is about humility before God and what form our service should take. That little girl had the humility to accept God's no in response to her prayer. And the answer to all of our prayers should be that our service should be humble. There's a modern tendency in life to make it all about the individual. But when a society thinks it has killed God, what is there left to believe in besides the self? Even as young as kindergarten, I've been told that children have these all about me weeks. Developmentally, this time shouldn't be about the individual. It should be about them helping to discover how they can give of themselves to the other, how they can help others, and how they can be a gift to the other people that are around them. And these lessons need to be instilled at a young age. The training given to children should help them overcome their tendencies to focus only on themselves. This will help them live holier lives and be good servants of the Lord. And when we do good works, we should not think of ourselves as being more important than others because we have been given faith, which is what enables those good works. No, we need to keep that humility before God and others. A temptation for Christians can be to think, man, I'm so good, I love God and I'm trying to love my neighbor, and the spiritual stuff is easy. But if we are doing good works, we are merely doing what God requires of us. So where is the greatness in that? The second half of the gospel reminds us how we are called to do the Lord's bidding as our mission in life. And after all, if God does want what's best for us, why not put your life and your service in his hands? Our lives should not be about putting others down to raise ourselves up. They should be about our relationship with God and extending Christ's presence in our world by our works. These works should all have their origin in God, for we can only do good because he gives us that grace. These works, once again, are all made possible by faith. Faith, which is God's voice within us. Faith, which is the foundation of the spiritual life. And faith, which is the initial prompting to do good. Would that our prayer might always be, Lord, increase our faith.